Do not worry, Jesus says. Do not worry. They are his words to you and to me this morning, I believe. Do not worry. And yet it's a well-attested fact that levels of stress and anxiety have increased significantly during this current pandemic. And I suspect that most, if not all of us, have found that to be true personally, for ourselves or for others we know. Yes, Christians too have been affected by this epidemic of anxiety. And it is into this situation, as much as any other, in fact, perhaps more than any other, that Jesus says to us. He says lovingly, he says seriously, do not worry. When considering the things we might have cause to worry about, the examples Jesus gives in that passage from Matthew are really to do with the basic necessities of life, food and clothing. And for some of the people who were listening to him at the time, those sort of worries would probably have been very real. They were also living under a very brutal and oppressive regime of Roman occupation. And no doubt they too had significant health worries to face up to in life as well, with no national health service to turn to and far less in the way of effective medical interventions to help. I tend to think they had rather more to worry about than you or I do today, even taking coronavirus into consideration. And yet, in spite of all this, Jesus says, do not worry. And notice that he doesn't say it because there isn't anything to worry about. There in the last verse we read, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own. Yes, our days may well be full of trouble. He freely acknowledges that. Even so, do not worry about those troubles, he says. I'm reminded of other words of Jesus from John's Gospel. He says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And then he says, my peace I give to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Jesus wants to swap our worry for his peace. And if that's what he says he can do, then we must believe that it's possible to receive even now, this very morning, his peace within, replacing the anxieties we feel. Back in Matthew, Jesus says to the worriers, "O you of little faith." So you see, it is a matter of faith, a matter of trust, faith and trust in God. Jesus, in fact, gives the solution to the problem of worry. He speaks of his and our Heavenly Father and says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. In effect, he's saying, take the focus off yourself and your immediate worries and see the bigger picture. God is at work in the world. Yes, today's world. God is building his kingdom. Firstly, in the hearts and the minds of those who follow him. And then on from that, through the kind of life his followers lead, creating families and communities of love. And he calls us to join this great project, a project which in its scope goes beyond this life and our current circumstances, and goes on despite the troubles we face. He calls us to give ourselves to playing a part in this as a first priority. And if we do so, he says that our day-to-day worries will diminish. And that in any case, The things we really need, the things that he sees as our basic necessities, he will supply. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given you as well. That's his promise. We must still be concerned about the practicalities of daily life, of course. We do what we can to overcome the troubles that come our way. For example, by being diligent in following the government's guidelines on coronavirus. But we should not worry about such things. Because as Jesus says, worrying will not add a single hour to our lives. But also because the future is in God's hands, in his very loving and capable hands. And here's where the passage from James comes in that we read as well. Let me just read it to you again. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. I read a very interesting article recently in Christianity magazine, all about the anxiety that is gripping so many of us these days, Christians included. And it highlighted one particular reason for it, something which results from a particular mindset associated with the modern society that we belong to. The problem is we've fooled ourselves into believing that we are in control of our lives, that the future is within our control, that through things like good government, advanced technology, including our impressive medical innovations and skill, that through these kind of things we can plot a safe course for ourselves on into the future. That's what we've come to believe. That's our expectation, that life will work out as we envisage it. Through our working lives and on into retirement, without thinking too much, of course, of what happens after that. But coronavirus has shattered this illusion. It shattered the idol which we have created of self-sufficiency and self-determination. The virus has reminded us that we are not in control, that we can't predict the future. It may hold good things for us, and we must strive for that, yes, but very likely it will hold bad things for us too, and we cannot prevent it from being so. And this revelation has frightened us. The truth is, only God knows what the future holds for each and every one of us. And yes, of course, we should make our plans for the future as best we can. But that must always be with the recognition that our plans for life may not work out as we hope. Proverbs 16:9 says, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord determines their steps." Only by throwing ourselves upon God and trusting in his promise to see us through both the good and the bad times, can we have confidence to face the future, whatever it may hold for us, and not worry. Trusting in God as the only solid and reliable thing in life means that we will wake up each morning thanking him for simply granting us a new day, thanking him for every good thing we do experience in life, all of which are gifts from God. And it includes those basic necessities which Jesus talked about, which we must not take for granted. And if our hearts are full of gratitude, there will be no room for anxiety. The two things are not compatible. As for the future, we should seek God's guidance as we make our plans as best we can, but always recognizing that His will for us may turn out to be something different than what we envisage it to be. Maybe He has valuable lessons for us to learn through things not turning out so well sometimes. Maybe we need some times of trouble to keep us close to God. The truth is, we cannot hope to know or understand all of His ways and His plans for us. And yet we can still have peace in our hearts, joy in our hearts even, knowing that God is in control. And nothing could be better than that. And when we do find ourselves worrying about something, God asks us to hand those worries over to Him. It sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? Thinking we can hand over our worries to somebody else. But this is God we're talking about. And if He says we can do so, He is not kidding us. He's asking us to trust Him and do what He says. There's that great verse in 1 Peter. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. So shall we try it? Why not? Why not try it now? What is it that's worrying you today? What is your biggest worry at the moment? Can you think of it? Can you name it in your mind? Well, let's bring those worries to God now, shall we? The God who says, do not worry. As we come to pray, maybe I can ask you to just clasp your hands together like this. And that worry, that thing you're worrying about this very morning, imagine you're holding on to it tightly, worrying about it. And then just release those hands and give that worry to God.